Hey guys, Philosopher here, and today I'm debuting the Infinity Watch infographic. In this infographic, which is linked below, I've got the T4 abilities and positioning and gear priority and ISO A class all here. And what I'm going to do today is walk through all of this and the reasoning behind it. And I have something really special for the first time in this infographic. So one thing you may or may not know is one thing you probably know is I do not put out these infographics until I've had a chance to build the team and to play the team extensively myself. I just don't think. I understand some content creators put out these lists before they've even unlocked the characters, and I don't think that that is very valuable. I remember back when I unlocked the Black Order a year ago or more, and I was following some of these lists, and they were just totally off because it's hard to judge in advance how the team's going to play. I mean, you never knew Thanos Basic was going to be so important, for example. So we've done a lot of testing to try to come up with a list. And we still weren't able to agree, and that's what I should tell you, is this is the first list that I've done that is really a combined effort. So usually when I do these lists, I send them out and get the views of multiple other players who I really respect, people who I consider to be top players. Well, this time one of them is a guy who was a mentor and teacher to me, Yeti. Helped me a lot when I was a newer player. You may know him because he's a really he used to be a content creator for quite some time and is a very well-known and respected player. He collaborated on this infographic. So this is actually a combined one. You can see Yeti's logo here. It is a combined infographic of the two of us, and this is a compromise list between our two separate lists. So what this is this is sort of the average. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to walk through the T4s. Then after I'm done walking through it and giving the reasoning for them, and explaining it, then I'm going to show you his list and mine side by side. I'll show you where we disagreed, and I'll explain why. So you get two different perspectives from two players who have used this team a lot in different game modes and have, some different opinions about certain of the T4s, but agree on a lot more than we disagree on. All right, let's get right to it. Let's start with the essential T4s, and the first one we both absolutely agree is the Phyla Vel passive. It's so important, guys, because this increased drain when the Infinity Watch team has Death Proof is really absolutely core to their sustain. It's key in the mirror match. In fact, both sides are trying to take down Phyla Vel because trying to get the team down without that drain, with that drain is so hard. Plus, on top of that, provides 10% damage. Easy, no-brainer, top choice by both of us. All right. We also agreed on the second one, and that is also a passive ability, and obviously a very important one for the team as well and how the team works. That's the Nebula passive, and the Nebula passive ensures that she is always assisting when you use the full team on all of the attacks. So that's really, really helpful. So now that you have that, I have that T4. It's 20% assist chance plus 20% per ally. That's 100%. So huge part of the team as well. There are some players who like to go for Nebula first because she had so much damage there, but certainly a key part of why this team is successful. Another one that Yeti and I totally agreed on. Okay, easy choice for number 2. Number 3 on the list, also a passive. These passives are always so important, right? Interesting how this works. And of course, this is the Adam Warlock passive. A little bit less important than the other two, but still super important. 10% max health is nothing to seize at. That's the big thing here. And then on top of it, it really provides a lot of insane survivability to Adam Warlock, who already revives once. Now when he gets below 20% health gain to deflect. I think it's easy to see why this is so important. It makes Adam Warlock really a very, very difficult character to take down, the hardest character to take down on this team as a result. All right. The fourth one, we also totally agreed on this one. And this is the Gamora basic. And this is one that may surprise you that Yeti and I both thought this was the fourth best T4 on the team. Because you might be thinking to yourself, well, what's so special at it? 40% damage? Well, let's go to the Empowered kit here. And here's something very important. So for it says attack primary target for 290% damage plus apply to bleed. Plus apply to bleed. It's very important to know whenever you have bleed on an attack, if you put a T4 on that ability, it will increase the percentage of the damage multiplier on that ability, or on the bleeds for that ability. So that's hugely important when you have a bleed-based ability. And then in addition to that, there's 40% damage is on all attacks. So that's 3 times. So it's actually 120% damage plus the increased multiplier on the bleed. And of course, this increases the ISO attack. So it's a real no-brainer. She is the damager of the team. Absolutely need to make sure that you have that basic. By the way, of course, when you are using the team under human control as opposed to AI control, this will be the first attack you do for Gamora, who's super important character on the team. All right, now this is where our list started to diverge. And so this is essentially a bit of a compromise at this point. So, for example, both of us had at number 6 the Gamora passive. So that becomes number 5 on our list because it's something we could both agree on. So the Gamora passive, we have 5th. We both think it's super important. And the reason why is 5% piercing for each Infinity Watch ally means an additional 20% damage to every single attack that she does. And because it's piercing, it ignores armor. Plus, of course, she gets the crit chance. Very, very, very helpful. She's the damager on the team. You want her to damage well. You want her to, getting kills and so forth. So easy choice here. This was a hard list to make because there's so many great T4s in the team. And the team is used in every game mode right now. And so, that was some of the challenge of this list. But these early T4s that are on this T4 infographic, not much disagreement there. All right, now we get to the next one on the list. And this is one we both had, pretty high on our list. We both thought was essential. Although I thought it was more essential than Yeti, and that is the Moondragon passive. So the Moondragon passive simply gives 20% focus and resistance to all Infinity Watch allies. Before the team went into the game, some people were telling me they didn't think this would be necessary at all because the focus and resistance is so insane on the team already. Then why do you need this? The answer is in the mirror match, if you have this T4 and you have a big enough team, you can get a lot of resists. So when people are trying to punch up on my Infinity Watch in, let's say, RTA, they are resisting. Many of their attacks are getting resisted. And I think the resistance really matters here, the focus and resistance for those mirror matches. If you're going to be using this team in Arena, I think it's fantastic. Also, in raids, these characters can, often resist a huge percentage of debuffs. I had a node recently where I took them in and Magneto tried to put debuffs on these characters and they resisted. It's just very, very powerful to have the focus and resistance as high as they can be after this T4. Something that is always on is something else I value is these passives. Stat boosts are kind of always on and help, whether you're using that ability or not. All right. And next, we have the Atom Basic. This is one that Yeti and I disagreed about a little bit, but we both thought it was an important ability, okay? And this is another one. You may say, why is this important? Well, not only is this a bleed ability, but you get an additional bleed on the basic. So this is instead of 1 bleed at a lower multiplier, you get 2 bleeds at a higher damage multiplier. And this impacts his ISO attacks. And if you are controlling Atom yourself on the first turn in the mirror match, you're going to use the basic because the enemies that you're going to be focused on are going to have immunity, like Fire Lavelle. So definitely a very important attack. He also has very long cooldowns on the special and the ult, so you're going to use the basic quite a bit in addition to, of course, obviously getting that advantage on the ISO attack. All right. And our next essential T4 is the Gamora special. Now, this is one, it's definitely a tier below some of the other ones that we've looked at, but it's still super important because, look, she's the damager of the team, the main damager. This is 80% damage to all enemies and apply heal block to all enemies for 2 turns. Wow. All right. Very, very, very powerful. Because look, let's say you're in a raid, you have 10 enemies, that's 80% damage to all, or in an arena situation, it's 80% damage to 5. And that additional turn of heal block can be very useful as well, particularly if you're able to control the cleanser, let's say in the mirror match, Phyla-Vell on the other team. So very good ability, certainly belongs that essential category. All right, and our last essential ability is the Phyla-Vell ultimate. Now, this is one that was a pretty substantial source of disagreement between me and Yeti. And one thing I will say with this one is that when you go to the this one wasn't a disagreement. We actually both thought that this one was essential. So this one, I've actually had some people ask me question why it is that I have the Phyla-Vell ultimate on this list. And what I will just say is that why I have it so high on this list. And what I'll say is that you do end up using this in every mirror match because the mirror matches go long. And it has a pretty decisive role in the match if you end up using it, because getting that offense up for 2 turns and defense up for 2 turns is absolutely huge. And the damage increase, 150% additional damage to the character that has the highest damage stat in the game. Hugely, hugely beneficial for the team. Very big turning point in the mirror match if you're able to get it off on the right character. Often results in a kill. All right, so now we're out of the essential T4s. And one thing I'll say, there's also a bit of disagreement. I thought more T4s were essential than Yeti did. I will go over the individual list later. I mean, I think Yeti's view is like, you can't have too many essentials. I think he had like 8 and I had like 13 or something like that. This is more of a compromise between them. I really think if you're going to be using this team in every single game mode, then you might as well just put a lot of these T4s on. But it really depends on your budget and how many T4s that you are getting. Okay, so that's part of it as well. So now let's go to the nice-to-have T4s. And the next one on this list is the Gamora Ultimate. So, you might be wondering, why is that so important? Well, if you look at the Gamora Ultimate, she gets on 100% additional damage to that target and on kill fill speed bar by 100%. So to me, this was more of an essential one. Yeti thought it was nice to have. It's right at the top of the nice to have list on our combined infographic. And basically the gist here is, since you get a 100% speed bar, a free turn if you get a kill, increasing your chance to get a kill is a pretty nice thing to have. Okay. All right. Next one on here is the Atom Special. Now, this is another one where, it's reasonable minds can differ as to how important this one is. This, applying disrupted to all enemy protectors for 2 turns is pretty nice. 120% damage to the primary target is pretty nice. Definitely very nice to have. But look, this ability is going to do a lot of stuff even without the T4. Of course, the ability block for 2 turns and to the primary target and all villain protectors and the disrupted for 1 turn and so on. But T4 is super nice to have. He hits like a truck. Absolutely. All right. Next one on our list is the Nebula Ultimate. Huge, huge source of disagreement between me and Yeti. The two, big sources of disagreement here between the two of us were Nebula Ultimate and Nebula Basic. So I use the Nebula Ultimate on turn 1. And the reason I use it on turn 1 is I like to start the matchup with Evade, and I like to get this on cooldown right away so that every third turn I'm getting evade on the entire team, because that just eliminates a lot of damage that way. Yeti, and it's also better damage, at least without when you don't have the T4 on Nebula's Basic, it's better damage on single target than Nebula Basic. Yeti has done the T4 Nebula's Basic, and he uses it a lot. He uses it on turn 1, and in his mind, using the Nebula Basic is a superior turn 1 move for this team than Nebula Ultimate. So you could decide for yourselves. I presented both points of view here. I've tried to do both points of view justice. So I like this one because you're not only getting an 80% damage boost to your primary target, you're getting 50% damage to all the secondary targets, and that can be with the T4 up to 10 targets. So if you don't have the T4, by the way, you literally you are only going to chain to up to 3 adjacent targets, and it's a 60% chance to chain. They're now here, instead of a 60% chance to chain, you go to a 100% chance to chain with the T4, and it's to up to 10 targets, which is fantastic if you're, let's say, in a raid situation. So to me, this is a really awesome ability. I had it a little higher on my list. Yeti had it lower than this. This is the compromise. You could decide for yourself how valuable you think it is. Okay. Next one is the Nebula Basic. So they're right next to each other, and it's really up to you, your play style. I will show you. I have not even done it myself on my own team, and I have almost all the T4s on the team. And that's because I just don't use it much. So from my perspective, and then I'll give you Yeti. So from my perspective, this is a 3-turn cooldown. The special is a 4-turn cooldown. So I don't use the basic as much. One thing you should also know is that you get almost no gain on the ISO attack from doing the T4 on this basic. Almost none. You do not get a percentage health increase on the ISO attack if you do this. That's actually very, very, very important for you to know. So, if you look at the ISO attack for Nebula, for example, in, MSF.gg, you will see that it's literally the exact same percentage health if you do this or not. So let me show you, for example, if we go to MSF.gg, so if you see here, let's take off the T4, 196% damage, 15% piercing, and 3% of the target's max health. With the T4, all you get is 2% piercing. That's it. You don't get an additional percent on the regular damage or of the max health. So for me, I that's why I haven't done this. But as I said, Yeti really likes this one. It's on the list there at number 14 because he's using it a lot. I had it lower on my list. I will show you both lists shortly. And he's using it constantly. He thinks 10% max health damage is really important. All right. Now we're getting into the true nice-to-have categories. I think that we kind of have a tier drop at this point because now we're going into the Adam Warlock Ultimate. And the Adam Warlock Ultimate is just pure damage. And the reason that we like this is because, hey, he's got a lot of damage. You're going to apply, 2 different targets, 70%. It's very good. But it's got a super long cooldown, and it's just damage. So we are entering, to me, a new category. So when I made my list, the reason that I cut it off after, kind of at a lower point is that I started getting into when you're in the Nebula Basic Adam Ultimate category, that's where you kind of get into the nice to haves. Yeti thought having more essentials than, even 8 or 9 was too many. So that's just 2 different perspectives on the list. It doesn't matter where you draw this line, but I definitely think there's a tier drop at this point in the list. Now, Moondragon Ultimate was a source of disagreement between me and Yeti. And one thing I want to say is this is a T4 you should only get if you are planning to use Moondragon outside of the full team. outside of Arena RTA. In other words, this is a Raid and Dark Dimension T4. And why is that? Because it is a 6-turn cooldown. You are not going to be using this, until, pretty late in the match, in the mirror match, okay? It's not ready turn 1 or anything like that. So this is something that really is not a humongous factor in the arena fight or the mirror match. But if you're planning to use her in the Doom Raid, having 30% healing instead of 15% healing is huge. And attacking all enemies for 400% damage instead of 320% is a nice add-on as well. But the main thing is the healing. And if you, for example, are going to bring her in with Captain Sam and she's going to do this all the time, getting twice as much healing is very good. So definitely Dark Dimension and Raid only choice here. I had it a little higher than Yeti did. I think he had it like 18th on his list. But I think it's very nice to have. And so it's 16th on our combined list. Now we've got a couple Phyla-Vel abilities here. And, Phyla-Vel on paper has the highest damage stat in the game. And her basic, you may think, do you even get to this in a match? And the answer is yeah, you do. Towards the later on in a mirror match and arena, you're going to get to this ability. And offense down for 2 turns on a target can be very useful at that stage to make sure, particularly if you're punching up, to do this on a Gamora or something can be helpful. Plus, it does chain to a couple different targets. You get 60% additional damage, and this is a high damaging character. So I really like this ability. And the next one, the last one on the list, if you take a look here is the Phyla-Vel special. And I got to show you, that is the only one of hers I have not done yet. But Yeti put it on as a nice to have. And I do think it's nice to have because you get an additional 50% damage to her primary target, and then 10% piercing to the primary, or 50% damage and 10% piercing to the primary and secondary target. So it's 150% total. Unless you're attacking somebody right in the end, 100 or 150% damage generally, and then 20 or 30% piercing. So it's nothing to sneeze at given how high her damage stat is. All right, so those are the T4s. Let me show you now. Let's go from the infographic here for a second to our combined lists. And so what I've done is I've put our list side by side, and then I'll walk you through each of our individual lists so you can see. So the column on the left, P is my philosopher. On the right is Yeti. And you can see we're in complete agreement amongst the first 4. We both had Gamora passive at 6. Moondragon passive, I had at 5. He had at 7. That's not much of a disagreement. We don't disagree until we get to Moondragon special. And here's the thing. If you get to Moondragon special, which I think I covered, now I'm wondering if I skipped that on the list, and I'll go back right now and we can cover it now. But Moondragon special, if I skipped it, is very useful and a source of disagreement between the two of us because what's nice about it is this clears all positive effects and it applies slow for 2 turns to the primary target. What this T4 does is it reduces the speed bar of the target by 30%. Instead of 30%, it's 50%, which is very nice. It's very, very nice. So, I have that at, I had that on my list at 11. He had it at 5. I don't think it's the 5th best ability because if you are putting whatever character it is, usually Gamora, down 30% on the speed bar and slowing her down, which reduces turn meter gain by 50%, that's good enough. I mean, that to me is a sort of thing where if you're on a real budget, you can skip that one versus it being so vital that I put it above Gamora passive or the Moondragon passive where you get 20% focus and resistance. So that's my judgment, but certainly it's a very huge ability. I think Yeti really values the way in which it can control a character like Gamora or whatever. Just keeping her from having a turn can get you an advantage in the mirror match. Obviously, I've done this T4 as has he. Adam Warlock basic, I feel like we're basically on the same page. The Gamora special, Yeti had lower than I did. This is the one that gives heal block for 2 turns. He had the Phyla-Vel ult higher than I did. That's the one that gives offense and defense up for 2 turns. but these are all roughly in the same range, right? Kind of in that lower essentials to nice to have. And then you could see here, Gamora all 10 or 13. I added a 10, he added a 13, the special. The Nebula alt and the Gamora basic, we talked about at length, the disagreement there, and the rest are all roughly the same. And you could see on my list, and you could see this literally how I did it in my mind. I had 13 essentials, and this was the one that was on the borderline here, and I really had it as a raid and DD only one. Whereas Yeti had only 8 essentials, and he thought even stuff like the Adam Warlock basic, Gamora special, Adam Warlock special, so forth. He had a Gamora ultimate. He had these in the good to have versus essentials. Now, I want to get into, we did have a little bit of differences on the positioning and all that stuff. Actually, let me just go right back here. So I will just say to you in gear priority, let's start with gear priority. So this is my gear priority, actually, and Yeti's is slightly different, and I'm going to give you Yeti's perspective. So we both had Gamora number 1. We both had Phyla-Vell number 2. And Gamora is the big damager on the team. Phyla-Vell also has a massive damage stat. She just takes fewer turns in the match than Phyla-Vell does, so than Gamora does, so she's less impactful. But she's also the character that gets targeted first, so she's too important to have big. I have Adam Warlock 3rd. Yeti had Moondragon 3rd, and Adam Warlock 4th. And my reasoning was Adam Warlock is going to be doing more damage and more impactful than Moondragon, and he's going to be more useful outside the team. Most likely he's going to be the character you'll rely on more outside the team. So I thought Adam Warlock, he's the heavier hitter of the two. He's the one you'll want bigger. Yeti's perspective is that Moondragon is going to be the one that they're targeting first, since she doesn't revive. Adam is super beefy, so you can get away with the smaller Adam. I think both are valid perspectives. I don't think his perspective is wrong. I just think it's a different way of looking at it. So you can make up your own mind. Nebula, we all agree, is the lowest gear priority. Even, Yeti, is, she's a character, by the way, who does a lot of percentage health damage, which percentage of the enemy's health, which doesn't, her stats don't matter for that. And she's more of just kind of a character doing assists. She's very survivable. She, does a revive. So she's kind of the lowest on both of our lists. Now, I will also say regarding positioning that, I had originally come up with this list with the positioning on the left. That was my original thought. And Yeti pointed out in his positioning, he came up with this one on the right, and he's like, look, against the AI, you're always going to want Adam Warlock in the center. And his thought process is the AI is always going to attack the character in the center. Adam Warlock is insanely survivable. Not only does he revive once, but he has that mechanic where he gets the deflect and all that when he gets below a certain percentage of health. And so just very hard to take down. So you want the enemy to beat their brains against Adam Warlock while the rest of your characters kill his team. So that's what you do against the AI. Let's say you're on arena offense, or you're in a raid or an alliance war or whatever. His point on arena defense, or the reason I came up with my positioning, which I think is superior for arena defense, where you're facing a human opponent, presumably they're not going to just auto you, is that the two survive. So the two characters that don't revive are Phyla-Vell and Moondragon. So both of us have them on the ends, okay, so that they're less likely to get splash damage, okay. Then the two characters that are most survivable are Gamora and Adam Warlock. And so I have those next to the two non-revivers to get, because if they get splash damage and they die, they're going to revive, and they're very survivable. Nebula is another character that sometimes enemies like to target. So I'm basically, because of all the assists and so forth, even though she revives, so I basically split up the 3 potential targets with the 2 that are most survivable and won't be targeted. This, though, I agree, is a better strategy, the better positioning against the AI. So we did it that way. ISO 8 class, we basically were in agreement here. If you look at our individual lists, the main difference is mine matches the infographic. What Yeti said was just he had Moondragon as a healer all around. I think it's pretty clear that Striker may very well be better in the mirror match because Adam Warlock, once she gets up to blue ISO, she generates a full regen instead of minor regen, and Adam Warlock can steal that. Plus, the healing I don't think matters as much because you have the drain and all of that. So getting additional active healing on Moondragon probably doesn't matter as much. Whereas, so getting an additional attack with her ISO is probably good. But I will say this. I mean, I have her as healer. I just keep her as healer all the time because she, in raids, you want to have her as a healer. Outside of the team, you want to have her as a healer. And it's not worth switching back and forth because I really don't think it makes that much of a difference in the mirror match. So I just run her as healer as well. But I think if you have a ton of like ions sitting around, I think you could level up Moondragon as a striker as well, have her sit on arena defense as a striker and lock that in for arena defense, and then use her as a healer in raids. So that's our ISO class, our positioning, our T4 list, gear priority, everything. You get the perspective of myself and Yeti on this one. Hardest T4 list I've ever had to do. Hardest infographic I ever had to put together. I appreciate your patience with it, but I hope you can see that there was a lot of work that went into this final product. And even if you quibble with something on our list one way or the other, I hope that you gain from the discussion. And really my goal here is not for you to follow either my perspective or Yeti's, but for you to learn from both of our perspectives and use it to improve your own roster. So if you like this video, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, give us your thoughts below in the comments, or go to my Discord. It's linked below. Lots of great discussions there. Yeti's on there a lot. I'm on there a lot. Always interested in answering questions and discussion and so forth. And also check out my Twitch stream. That's linked below. I stream most weeknights.